One of the things that my mother used to always say when I was bring home homework from home is she would tell me and she would say, va con tu papá, va con tu papá, escribe muy bonito, tu papá escribe muy bonito. And that means, in translation of English, that means your dad writes very beautiful. Your dad's really smart. Your dad's really smart. He writes beautiful. He writes. But the expression isn't quite understanding, I think, when I'm expressing that. Because for somebody that doesn't have an education, any standard education that somebody has and has the ability to write is always beautiful to someone because they don't have an education. My mother didn't know how well academically and understand how academically my father was. Like he could exceptionally write very beautifully, very beautiful, and he enjoyed it. I mean, you can see how he focused on his handwriting, and my mother would would watch my father write in cursive. So when I grew up, my mother would watch me like write and do like homework or ask her for a report, or I'd show her something along my homework or something like that, which I never did my homework very much, because I was at least at least when I got older. But anyway, she would pay attention to my handwriting. She would just look at me like wish that she could get that education. She'd be like, "Mira, tu escribes muy bonito." And one of the things that I think that I don't know if it had to do because I watched my dad's handwriting in first grade, but I remember when I was a kid, my teacher and I had some of the most beautiful handwriting when I was in first grade, learning how to actually draw my letters, and but I don't know if that came from my father just wanting to sort of do the same thing he wanted to do when it came to his handwriting, which is an inspiring influence to me. These are people that have been executed. Many years ago, when I was a kid, I was about 11, I think it was before my father's suicide. My grandpa in Mexico, he hung himself in the backyard on a tree. And he was found hanging, and one of my uncles who had molested me found him early in the morning hanging there. And I know it sounds really messed up, but the clothes that he wore is very similar to this type of clothes that he wore. You see these outfits and these sort of over proportioned kind of clothing, sort of unmeasurement. It's not measured very well on the body. He wore that kind of clothes, but I'm not sure how people associate with it. But during this seeing these pictures, because I associated with so much of this era of time with my father, and it does look a lot like, because my grandpa, I remember when he was in his house, he had some of these outfits, the clothes, like sort of that vest sort of looking. If you look at this handwriting, it's everything during that time they used to do is cursive. Everything had to be done in cursive. Very, very few times you'd have to find people that were doing fine print. But you see how beautiful that's written, the cursive, like how legible, and it's ancient. The cursive during that time was only, there's a specific style that was only used during that time. They don't reuse anymore. But I remember reading these postcards that my dad had. He told me he write to his mother, I think he told me he tried to write to his mother like every 6 months or something. I said, "Did you ever keep in contact with mom?" "Yeah, I tried to. I'd send her a postcard every 6 months or so, once a year, or something." But I'm gonna say I think he said once every 6 months. He used to always tell me, "Hector, you ask too many questions." Not getting mad, but he's like, "Hey, you ask a lot of questions." so much of like when I would watch like Schindler's List or any old movies, even Emiliano Zapata or Pancho Villa, which was one of my dad's favorite movies. Um, I I associated so much with the impressions that he gave during that era of time because, my father would tell me these stories and how he was as a person, and then I would look at these cursive writing and it would like take me back in time. Like if I went like Back to the Future, if I went back in time to what it really was to be alive and be functioning in the world during that era of time. It's almost kind of like he felt like he got lucky. He made it through because there's so many people that didn't. Yeah, handcuffs. There's actually a picture with my father that had two friends, two Mexican guys, and these two Mexican guys, he told me that were very, very good friends with him, and there's a picture of him in jail, and they're posing and going to a museum, and one's tall, one's short, and they're in this museum, and they take this like a sort of I don't know what you call it, like this makeshift jail. It's just a fake jail, and they take a picture. But I remember these two guys that he said, and he said they were really good friends, and I think one of them was named Julian, and that's where Julian's name came from because he said there was a guy by the name of Julian that really helped him a lot in life. He said they were really good friends. And I asked my father, these two guys in this picture, did they go to school? And he told me no. He said no, they didn't. He says he was the only one going to school at that time. They were just there for the service. But you had to stick with your own in order to survive. So if you get thrown out like I do, you get eaten by the wolves. I can only imagine like people that were probably printing experts. I wonder if they could duplicate money using fake money, and they probably could because technology was very minimal.